Victim blaming is fuel for domestic violence. Many woke people, feminists, seekers and authorities, maybe even you, victim blame without even realizing it. I'm going to share with you why it's such a big deal, it's affecting everyone, including you, and why we must put a stop to victim blaming. According to the World Health Organization, intimate partner violence and sexual violence are mostly perpetrated by men against women. Recent global figures indicate that about 1 in 3, 35% of women worldwide have experienced either physical and/or sexual intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence in their lifetime. Child sexual abuse affects both boys and girls. International studies reveal that approximately 20% of women and 5 to 10% of men report being victims of sexual violence as children. Women aged 15 to 44 are more at risk from domestic violence and rape than from car accidents, cancer, war and malaria. Between 2001 and 2012, the amount of American women murdered by current or ex-male partners was almost double that number of US troops killed in the war in Afghanistan and Iraq. And despite relentless education efforts, the picture for women remains both bleak and grave, unfortunately. Where there are laws designed to tackle domestic violence, only a very, very small fraction of incidents are ever reported to the police, and even less result in actual charges. Untold number of women remain trapped in violent relationships, whilst others face these huge challenges in order to get free and keep safe once they have escaped. A major factor in preventing women from seeking help and much needed constructive dialogue is the implicit and explicit victim blaming ingrained in public perceptions of domestic violence. Victim blaming is fuel for domestic violence. Domestic violence, battering, verbal, mental, psychological, emotional abuse is a global epidemic impacting more women than war and cancer combined. And many men and children are also suffering from abusive relationships. Misinformation and misconceptions are actively fueling this injustice. If we're to eradicate relationship abuse and domestic violence, we must first end the culture of victim blaming. Yes, we'd like to imagine that the world has grown more enlightened about domestic violence. It's no longer legal in many countries, at least, for a man to beat or rape his wife. And some nations have gone one step further and are pushing to make psychological and emotional abuse a criminal offense. We live in a time in which there is unprecedented awareness of domestic violence, abuse, and arguably greater social rejection of this devastating behavior, this crime, than ever before. Yet, domestic violence remains a global epidemic, present in every country, culture, and community worldwide. People who have never been abused, they often wonder why a person wouldn't just leave. They don't understand that breaking up often is a lot more complicated and dangerous than it might seem. Victim blaming culture must stop. I can't stress this enough. Abuse, rape, and sexual harassment is not, I repeat, not the victim's or survivor's fault. Yes, while it's good to take responsibility for one's life situation, choices and actions, it should not be put on the victim to be responsible for their abuser's actions. The fact that you have been or are being abused is not your fault. The fact that someone that you know has been or is being abused is not his or her fault. Victim-blaming attitudes marginalize the victim or survivor and makes it harder to come forward and actually report the abuse. If the survivor knows that you or society in general blames the victims for the abuse, then he or she will not feel very safe or comfortable coming forward, talking about what's happened and asking you for help. Victim-blaming attitudes also reinforce what the abuser has been saying all along, that it is the victim's fault that he or she is being abused. And victims of abuse, they already tend to blame themselves, even without the so-called help of society, well-meaning people, police, medical personnel, lawyers and judges, relatives and friends, that sort of insinuate that you somehow maybe are to blame, held a bit responsible. It is not the victim's fault or responsibility to fix the situation or the abuser. By engaging in victim-blaming attitudes, society allows the abuser to perpetrate relationship abuse and sexual assault while avoiding accountability for those actions. In order to stop victim blaming, it is helpful to understand why people do it in the first place. It's a protective mechanism. So why people blame the victim or the so-called survivor once they've gone out? The main reason is that people blame the victim to distance themselves from this unpleasant occurrence, and this gives them a false sense that this could never happen to them. By labeling or accusing the victim survivor, they can then see the victim survivor as different from themselves. People reassure themselves by thinking, well, because I'm not like the victim, because I would never do that or put up with that, this would never happen to me. If I would have been in his or her situation, I would have acted differently. And then you feel safe. We need to help people understand that this is not a helpful reaction at all. It's counterproductive. Words, questions, and comments that directly or indirectly puts the blame on the victim or survivor. They can look like this. Did you make him jealous? That doesn't sound like him. What did you do to pull out that side of him? Why didn't you fight back? Why didn't you fight back harder? Why didn't you yell? Why didn't you tell anyone about it? You should have told me. Did you hurt his feelings? Why didn't you ask for help? Why did you let him hurt you? Why didn't you go to couples therapy? Why did you stay so long? Why did you leave without trying harder? Maybe he was just really stressed and had a lot of responsibilities. It can't be easy living with a beautiful woman like you. You should understand that. Can't you just forgive him? Can't you just work through your differences? Have you thought about that maybe you made him do that? Why did you date someone like that? Didn't you see it coming? It was obvious. You should have seen it coming. Why did you get yourself into that situation in the first place? You should have known. It was wrong marrying him. It was wrong having children with him. You should have known before you committed like that. But you said you were happy, you looked happy. How can that be if what you're saying is true? Doesn't make sense. Looks like you have a really bad judge of character. You should have known. Maybe you deserved what happened to you. Well, if it did happen, well, you should have some proof to show me. Well, jealousy is a sign of love. Don't be too hard on him. But why didn't you go to the hospital? Why didn't you go to the police? You shouldn't have reported him to the police. He doesn't deserve that. Do you really want to ruin his life? Destroy his whole career, embarrass his family, hang out your children's father? Maybe he wouldn't have acted like that if you wouldn't have said or done that. Maybe you made him crazy. Maybe you're exaggerating. Come on. Maybe overreacting, overly picky, too sensitive, too weak, too quiet, too soft, too hard to please. Maybe it was your fault. What did you do to trigger him? But it's normal. You know, look at you. You're so beautiful. Haven't you seen how people are looking at you? Maybe you're imagining. Maybe you don't remember things rightly. You shouldn't have married him. Did you provoke him? It takes two to tango. Don't put it all on him. Maybe it's just cultural differences. I'm sure he didn't mean to do that. It's not really like him. Maybe you don't understand his sense of humor. I think you misinterpreted it. The dog that barks doesn't bite. The men here in this country, men here in a family, yes, they have a hot temperament. It's normal, you know, to talk with their hands, but it means nothing. It's not like they would sort of beat you up like crazy. No. But he's so nice. No, I think there must have just been a misunderstanding. He would never hurt you on purpose. You know you shouldn't smile at strangers. They can get all sorts of strange ideas. Domestic violence, yes, it shouldn't be acceptable. It's never acceptable, but I'm traditional and I believe in family values. You should stay together as a family. When you got married to him, you don't leave your husband. No. With time and your female charm, you can get him to calm down, become good. You could, for instance, cook his favorite meal a lot more often. It worked for me. Of course, it's not nice being scared of your husband, I get that. But you know what? The most important thing for a child is to grow up in a united family. You should stay. You should go back to him. You walked through a dangerous neighborhood. What did you expect? Did you wear that? No wonder you got raped. No wonder you got sexually abused. You talk about your sexuality openly. I mean, no wonder people feel free to touch you without consent. Well, you're openly gay. No wonder you can't get certain jobs. It's obvious. Well, you outed yourself as a transvestite on a website. No wonder you're discriminated against. What did you think? Were you drunk? Was he drunk? I saw the way that you smiled at him. What were you wearing? Did you lead him on? You both have problems. Myself, I've been told most of these things. I'd say probably over 90% of the things above. It is time to talk about abuse and to honestly look at its roots, outlets and faces. By understanding how, why, by whom, where and when abuse is inflicted and received, we can then heal from it and prevent it from happening. Playing small to protect someone else's smallness prevents both from being their full potential. Victim blaming in language. One of the biggest sources of victim blaming is the way we talk about it. Language surrounding abuse and sexual assault immediately puts our attention on the victim instead of on the perpetrator, the abuser. This is a demonstration developed by Julia Penelope showing how language can be victim blaming. And this is something we also see a lot in media, in the news. So you go from John beat Mary This sentence is written in active voice. It's clear who's committing the violence. Mary was beaten by John. The sentence has now been changed to passive voice, so Mary comes first. Mary was beaten. Notice that John is removed from the sentence completely. Mary is a battered woman. Being a battered woman is now part of Mary's identity, and John is not part of the statement anymore. As you can see, the focus has shifted entirely to Mary instead of John, encouraging the audience, the readers, to focus on the victim's actions instead of on the perpetrator's actions. What you can do about it, there's a lot. Challenge victim-blaming statements whenever you hear them. Do not agree with abusers' excuses for why they abuse. Let survivors know that it is not their fault. Hold abusers accountable for their actions. Do not let them make excuses like blaming the victim, alcohol or drugs for their behavior. Acknowledge that survivors, they are their own best experts, and provide them with the resources and support. This is another example of how we can avoid victim blaming. So, reframe the questions. Why does the victim stay? To why does the perpetrator abuse? Inform yourself about abuse, how the abuser works, what he/she does to control, manipulate, blame, confuse, make his or her victims feel like he or she is not going crazy and is out of control. Why people stay in relationship with abusers. Understand that abuse can happen to anyone, regardless of social status, intelligence, self-confidence, being well educated, and regardless of age and culture. Understand that frequently asked questions and comments like those I mentioned before often diminishes or removes the perpetrator's, the abuser's accountability and puts it on the victim, the survivor instead. Remember, if you are aware of any type of abusive behavior, sexual harassment, but also racism, homophobia, and do not speak out against it, your silence communicates implicitly that you see nothing unacceptable taking place. The world is a dangerous place, not because of those who do evil, but because of those who look on and do nothing. Albert Einstein. Why doesn't she just leave? She must have no self-esteem whatsoever to put up with that. It was a crime of passion. He loved her so much. I would never stay with a violent man. Women who don't leave are stupid. She brought it on herself. All these responses reinforce exactly what the perpetrator wants their victims to think, that the victim is to blame and they are not. This is how it looks when we switch those around. Why doesn't he just stop beating her? He must have no self-esteem whatsoever to do that. It was an evil crime. He hated her so much, but he used love as his excuse. I've been lucky not to end up with a violent man. People who abuse others are stupid. She is not to blame. It's time to end the injustice of victim blaming. Yes, let's take preventative action. Help parents heal their traumas and negative behaviors. Teach them stress management, mindfulness, meditation, and self-knowledge so that they don't raise future abusers and sexual offenders. And let's put meditation and mindfulness as daily exercises in our schools. Sure, we can also look at the bigger picture and understand that yes, The abusers, they didn't have their needs met when they were children, and often they were abused themselves. But let's not get confused here and remove their responsibility from the equation. It's time to place the responsibility for domestic violence squarely on where it actually belongs, on those who perpetrate it, the ones who choose to abuse. Get informed, stay safe, speak up, take action, and share this important information with as many as possible. Abuse don't just affect the immediate victims, but entire families, communities, and society as a whole. Childhood abuse, both experienced and witnessed, create future dictators, rapists, violent fundamentalists, abusers, pathological narcissists, and sociopaths. And the world has enough of those already. So let's remove the favorable conditions of abuse and the breeding ground for raising abusers.